All right, we are back with another edition of whatever we call this. I don't have a name for it yet. I guess breaking down Georgia football. Um, that's a title in progress in work. All right, Georgia, Alabama, game of the year. Till the next game of the year. College game day is going to be there. Uh, feels like the whole world's going to be there. And if you listen to the media, you listen to Georgia's fan base. Georgia shouldn't even show up. There's no reason to play this game. We should might as well just take the loss and move on. So go ahead. I mean, if you got anything else to say,
Well, I will say that I'm probably not quite in that camp of Georgia fans, but you can understand the hesitation, the concern, the anxiety around this. Alabama, forget Nick Saban, but let's just take Alabama. Represent a large portion of Kirby's L's while he's been at the University of Georgia. So we've had one successful game out of from Georgia when we played Alabama. Every other time we've played them, it has looked like the Georgia that we expect doesn't seem to show up. So there's extra motivation. I think it's a big statement game for Kirby. I think it's a big statement game for DeBoer. But if Georgia is going to be big dogs, pun intended, of the SEC, then now's the time to put that stamp out there. And especially after, which Alabama player was, I think it was Milroe, saying that he could see that Georgia players quit last year. And that was supposed to be the motivation for Carson Beck and Tate Ratledge, who's now unfortunately not going to play in this game. But these older guys to come back and do it the right way and have a chance at winning a championship. This is an important game. It's not a must win, I don't think, for either team. But the thing I would say is if we have trouble with Alabama on the road, it doesn't bode well for the rest of the season because it don't get any easier. So big game. I am anxiety ridden. I don't know which team of Georgia is going to show up. Is it going to be the team that showed up in the second half against Clemson? Or is it going to be the team that showed up in the first half and then almost the entire game against Kentucky? So I don't know. I know on paper this should be a close game, and I think it will be a close game, and I think they're evenly matched. I think I like Georgia. If it was at home, I would feel much better about the 2-point spread, the 2-point favorite, evidently, that Georgia is. I wouldn't touch this game, even if I wasn't a fan of Alabama or Georgia. I think it's too tight, and there's too many things that can happen. So I've got some keys to the game that are not going to be mind-blowing or earth-shattering. I'm sure it's anybody that's watched this year and the last couple of years of Georgia, Alabama, you can kind of point those out. But, yeah, I have no idea what Georgia team's going to show up. I really don't. I have a hope, but I don't know. And that's the reason I think you have not a malaise. That's not the right word. It's an anxiety, trepidation about going to Tuscaloosa and playing right now because we should win, but I just don't know which team's going to actually show up, and that gives me pause.
well, see, I don't know whether or not it's because of the extended playoff and knowing that Georgia really could lose 3 games and get into the playoff.
Probably.
I would say more than likely. So maybe this game doesn't feel as important. Narrative wise, people are going to put the narrative that they want. And, again, I don't really care about the narratives. If anything, even if Georgia does lose, I think I alluded to this last week. If Georgia loses and they play well and they still lose, I feel better about this rather at the end of that game rather than the Kentucky game. Because I think Alabama is going to be a team. Right now, they're going to be a team that gets better progressively over the year. Georgia's probably going to get a little bit better, but not as better as Alabama will be at the end of the year. I think that's kind of what we're looking at, and maybe that is a key to Georgia winning. I don't know. But again, the anxiety of the game, it just hasn't been there for me. I haven't really, I don't care what anyone has said about it. Most people are picking Alabama. Again, don't care. I just want to see Georgia play well. I want them to play a 4-quarter game. Will they do that? Kirby Smart in these games, in these big games, Georgia doesn't come out flat-footed. They usually play well. The exception really has been twice, and that's been Alabama in the SEC championship in 21, and then the SEC championship last year against Alabama. But most of the time, Georgia in these big moments, big games, rise up to the occasion and play well. And here's the other thing that really has me not that worried about whether or not it's going to be a ball game, if Georgia's going to win or lose. Kirby Smart with 1 week to prep with a bye in there, pretty good. The lone losses, Texas in 2019 in the Sugar Bowl, which half the team quit by that point, more than half. And then 2016, Florida, which, again, Georgia was completely outmatched athlete-wise in that game. Plus, that season was already a wash anyway. So I don't even remember that game. I blocked it out of my memory. That's how bad it was.
Yeah, I don't specifically.
I know. Here's what I do remember for the Georgia fans that like doing this type of stuff. I know Jim Chaney threw the ball a ton. I think Jacob Eason threw the ball like 40 times in that game. And that's whenever Nick Chubb and Sony Michel came to him and were like, "Hey, dude, what are we doing? Run the ball." Yeah. So, I'm not that anxiety-ridden. I'm not that nervous. I just want to see Georgia play a competent game. I don't want them – if now we go out in the first half and look like we did against Clemson and Kentucky, then the anxiety is going to start ratcheting up. I'm not too worried about it. Here's another thing that I wanted to point out, and just to keep in mind throughout the game. So Georgia and Alabama played 70 times, over 70 times. Whatever team scores first to 30 is 22-0. And here's the other thing. Georgia.
Wait. I want to slow down. So in the 70 matches, first off, how many, okay, over 70. How many of those teams over the years have actually reached 30 at all? So what out of that sample size, what are we talking about? And
it's 22.
22 out of the 70 plus games have reached one team's at least reached 30 points.
Yeah.
All right. And whoever's reached that is 22-0.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. All right. Sorry. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah. And here's the other thing. Georgia, when they have played Alabama, the curse number, if you just want to look, when they lose to Alabama, it's 24. Last year in the SEC championship, it was 24-27 Alabama. In 2021, Georgia only scored 24. It's like 41-24. The COVID year in 2020, I went to that game. It was miserable. I hated every moment of it. Played that game, it was like 40-something to 24.
And we were ahead at halftime in that game too, if I recall.
Yeah, 24-20.
Yeah.
2018, same thing. 24 points Georgia scored. 2017, I think in the national championship, it was either 20 or 24. I can't.
And we were ahead at halftime in that game.
Well, we were in the third quarter. We were up 20-7. So, yeah. So the curse number 24. Can Georgia get over? Because hey, when they scored more than 24 points, last time I checked, it was 33-18. So 24 is a curse number. 30 is a curse number. So Georgia needs to get over the hump to win the game.
Key to the game, in my opinion, just based on watching the two teams play. If you're Georgia, first of all, you can't get beat on the outside in the run game specifically. You got to make Milroe beat you and try to keep him in the pocket and matriculate the ball down the field and have consistent drives. We have got to limit the explosive plays. It's every ball game, but you got to limit turnovers. And then from our offensive standpoint, one of the things that I've heard David Pollock say, and I may have even said it on this podcast, so far it's true, but we've also got we've only played 3 games, but Georgia's offense has a lot of really good players, but I haven't seen anybody that's going to be the player to go to in crunch time. And we've got to establish that, because that's just like a lineup in baseball. It keeps the lineup going. We've got to be able to convert third downs and have somebody. They don't have to be a superstar, but we got to find out who the dogs are, again, pun intended, of who can play in crunch time and who's going to be the go-to guy for Carson. And we got to be able to stop the run and make Milroe beat us from being in the pocket as much as possible. That's the key to the game, in my opinion.
The thing is, he's better throwing statistically in the pocket than he is on the run.
Don't care.
I know, but look, Alabama is right now, and really last year as well, they were a boom or bust offense. They cannot sustain drives. If you go back and you watch the SEC championship game, their plays are chunk plays. And then if you watch the Alabama-Wisconsin game, chunk plays. You watch their tune-up games, chunk plays. And then USF, there was no chunk plays, and you saw what happened. They couldn't sustain drives, and their defense was on the field too long. Their secondary, extremely young. Cornerbacks are young. They lost a ton of talent to the NFL. They have a ton of talent, extremely talented, and probably one day will be the best. There are 2 reasons why Georgia lost that game in the SEC championship to me. The lines of scrimmage was the first and foremost. I think we all would agree to that. And then the second reason why is because Alabama's secondary and their defensive backs played a damn good game and shut down Georgia's wide receivers and shut down Carson Beck. And there's a lot of throws there where Beck should have had it and should have had a big explosive play, and somebody on Alabama side breaks up a pass. It was a good defensive play. So can one of the two change? I don't know. I think Georgia. I really don't know. Offensive line wise, are we better than Alabama?
I would have said yes with Tate Ratledge in there. And I'm not saying there's a huge drop-off, but the cohesiveness playing on the road and the communication on the offensive line, I think people don't realize how important that is. And that makes me question that. We've got a first-year starting center, our veteran who knows all the line blocks and is probably helping him out, that right guard, Tate Ratledge, he's out. So a lot of that's going to fall on Carson and being able to communicate the blocking assignments up and down the line based on the look. So if you would have told me before the season, I would have said, yeah, Georgia's offensive line, I like our talent and our maturity and our experience better than I do Alabama's. Now, that's a wash to me. To me, I'm just looking at it. I think it's a wash.
Yeah, I totally agree. So that's the thing. And then defensively, to me, this is the biggest key. I think Georgia offensively is going to be fine. I think they're going to be able to scrounge enough points to win the game. Now, defensive line-wise, I know we're getting guys off of injury. Mikel's he's probably coming back. He'll give you
limited snaps is what I read from that, though.
Yeah, exactly. Right. He'll probably give you 15 to 20 snaps. Warren Brinson back. Stackhouse back. Jordan Hall, or is it Jordan Hall?
Jarrett.
Jamal Jarrett back as well.
Jarrett.
Is Jordan Hall is going to come back?
I didn't think I thought he was trying to. It's hard to read in between Kirby because he's not going to tell you. But I got the feeling Brinson and Mikel would be back. And the other guys, he said, were trying to go. I just don't think they're going to be, because they haven't been able to practice. I just don't think they're going to get to play. So we'll be healthier on the defensive line, but I don't think we're going to be healthy.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, so they're going to still be – Alabama's banged up. Their linebacker is still questionable. Malachi Moore, who's really good. Their defensive back, He has a head concussion, I would assume. It says head on the report. Jordan Hall's questionable. Warren Brinson's questionable. So, and then Michael as well. I think I said him already. And then Roger Grobson's still out. So, hold on. I got to switch back. I know this is really good podcasting. But, yeah, Georgia should be okay on the defensive line. Can they – Alabama's going to be able to run the ball. Can Georgia limit the effectiveness of – I don't know, because they didn't do it last year, and that's Milroe did enough with his legs to sustain drives, and Georgia couldn't get him, and he did not.
Here's the other thing too, talking about the line of scrimmage and that being a key to the game, and that usually is the key to the game on almost all games. But one thing's for damn sure, Georgia's going to have to and there's a couple of things that I just want to point out. The year that we won and beat them in the national championship, if you remember, that was a field goal back and forth type of game. But after Stetson and that questionable fumble, it seemed like Georgia, when they came back out on every drive they've had after that fumble, they played with a intensity that Kentucky was playing with from start to finish in the game. And if Georgia's going to win this game, they have got to be prepared until the whistle blows to play as intense and as physical of a football game. And that's one of the reasons I think whenever Milroe says that, to me, if I was playing, that would, especially if I was a defensive player, that would question my manhood a little bit. And last week, I think Georgia may have gotten caught flat-footed and honestly a little bit embarrassed because they got their asses whipped on the offensive and defensive line. And if they allow that to happen against Alabama in Tuscaloosa, this thing can get away from us quickly. So to match the intensity from the very beginning until the time they are back in the locker room after the whistle blows, however long that takes, that's going to be a critical part to this game. And I don't know if they play tough and they play with some intensity, I feel good enough to let the chips fall where they may, which is what you said. Just play a solid game for 4 quarters, and we'll let happen whatever happens.
Well, that's the thing. All offseason, this is and especially this week, I think the revenge factor is a factor. I know they're going to play it down. Obviously, Kirby's going to tell them to sing from the same hymnal. But I think definitely the revenge factor is a thing. All offseason they heard it. I think they heard it in December and then on, and the players that are freshmen, they heard it as well because they were all early enrollees. I think Georgia will answer that bell. You have answered that bell every time under Kirby, so that's why I'm not that worried about it. Here's the thing: this game is such a razor thin line that they're both evenly matched up. We both agree that Georgia has the better quarterback in this game. Georgia probably has better wide receivers right now, maybe. And maybe Georgia has the better running back right now. So it comes down to the line of scrimmage. And I think if Georgia if they play a physical game and they answer the bell, Georgia should win that game. They should, but you turn the ball. Here's the recipe: you turn the ball over, you allow them to, be able to run the ball on you. It's going to be a long game, and I don't know. That's what happened in the SEC championship.
Big play on special teams, a busted play, an explosive play, and them being able to consistently run the ball enough just to keep Georgia off balance and convert third downs. It can be a really long game. Totally agree with you.
And it might be a narrow eyelash game where it comes down to a kick. But again, that you're going to have to beat Georgia that way. It is the recipe for them to do it. And I worry about the snaps from Wilson to Beck. They haven't been great in the Kentucky game. No. There were a couple of times where it was, it made me.
One of them one of them wasn't on the center. Beck just took his eyes off because Ernest Green and others were getting their asses handed to them, and Beck was rattled. And that's the other thing. I think DeBoer said it in his press conference. They have got to make Carson Beck uncomfortable. If they're successfully able to do that, Carson's got to hang in there a little bit more and be. I know that's easy to say whenever I'm not the one with 300-pound defensive linemen bearing down on me, but he's got to hang in there, and offensive line's going to have to give him some time. But if he gets spooked and they are able to rattle him, it's a problem.
Yeah,
and Kentucky did that early.
And Kentucky was able to sit on the ball and limit Georgia's possessions, and that is. I think most teams are going to try to replicate that recipe and try to beat Georgia that way. We'll see if Alabama's successful, because the thing is, I just don't know. I mean, I could be a believer at the end of this game, but I don't know if Milroe's able to sustain drives like that. I don't know, because that rocket arm of his, his rocket's like a North Korean rocket. It can go anywhere.
Well, you're right. That's the reason I said it early on. You got to keep him in the pocket and make him beat you from being a pocket passer. Everything in front of you. You can't have busted plays and confusion in the secondary, and we got to be able to limit the run. If we can do those things, I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, I do too. There was one other thing that I wanted to mention, and I completely forgot. If the narratives of this game is not that important playoff picture wise. I mean, there is some, like Aaron Murray's like, oh, this is a must win for Georgia. It's not a must win. There's Mississippi is going to be a must win. Tennessee will be a must win. This is not a must win. I think it's important, A, for narrative wise, and then B, all the other underneath stuff, i.e. recruiting, because then Alabama's starting to do the NIL game, and they're rolling that, and if they beat Georgia, that's a proof of concept. They're able to get guys that we're in on as well.
Kalen DeBoer and his staff will all of a sudden start learning the Southeastern Conference, because they'll have players that are saying, well, wait a minute, Georgia's supposed to be the big bad program, but they still have it knocked off. So it's going to ease Kalen DeBoer into the Southeastern Conference in recruiting for sure.
Absolutely. And then here's the other thing too. I mean, underlying wise, Georgia, Alabama, they're the two, top programs in the SEC, have been for a very long time. That always matters whenever these two square off. And to me, this isn't a rivalry, and like Georgia and Florida, but we always had the problem with Mark Richt and Florida. Always, even when Georgia better team hands down, always felt like Florida somehow was our boogeyman. Always got us whenever we least expected it. Alabama obviously is Alabama, so you kind of expect it, but there is starting to become a little bit of a like.
Sure, there is.
Why is it Alabama? Why can we not? We're equally as talented, sometimes even more. Why aren't we winning these games? Why do we look like shit whenever we go out there? And if Georgia does lose the game, there's going to be a large portion of the fan base who's going to start questioning that. And I don't know. I don't know how I will react to that, but it is, for narrative's sake, that is going to be a problem. So it's huge in that regard.
No, and I'm probably more I'm older, so I was around for Munson and Dooley and all golf and all those years. And I can tell you, I'm probably going to be in that sentiment for about a 2-week period where what is it about Bama? Two equally team, they've got our number. I'm going to feel like that, and I'm going to start questioning things. But here's the thing. We got a long season in front of us, and that's what maybe Kirby was talking about along with all the other stuff when he says assume nothing. One game early on in the season does not make a season. You got to be able, and especially if you're Georgia, you got to look good in these other really big-time games. And so, yeah, it's going to hurt, and you can worry about recruiting next year and all these other things, but you still got to come out there and you got to play and execute for the rest of the season. So I don't agree that it's a must win. It's a big game for all the ancillary reasons that you pointed out, I would say recruiting and being the dominant player in the Southeastern Conference is the reason. But as far as this season and the impact this game makes, now if Georgia goes out and lays an egg and looks like crap, that could be that could be a narrative, but I don't think that's going to happen. If Georgia can't beat them and it's a close game, the narrative is going to be, why is it that Kirby just can't get over the hump against Bama? That's going to be the narrative.
Yeah, that will be the narrative. I gotta tell you, I keep going back to this. I'm just really not that worried about this game. This is a big game, but again, there's so many. You got Texas, you got Ole Miss,
Tennessee.
You have Tennessee, you got Florida. No, they're a disaster, but you never know. And then
you got Auburn, who freeze. Yeah,
he's throwing players under the bus. He's killing people. And then they come in here and they play a good game. So it's a very long season. And I got to be honest with you. I know a lot of people are like, well, if Georgia doesn't win this game and they lose like another one, they're not going to be in the SEC championship. I got to be honest with you. Why? Honestly, I don't want to play in the SEC championship. I'm good. So, I think we're better off not playing in the SEC championship.
So somebody with the way the playoff system operates in the last couple of years of what the committee did, one could make that argument. Georgia got penalized for being in the Southeastern Conference championship game last year. So to me, rest players and don't worry about winning the championship, go win the whole thing. I hope that's not, from a fan's perspective, a logical looking at it on paper. I can see how one would make that argument. But from a fan's perspective, I want Georgia to play in the SEC Conference Championship. But I understand if we don't, I'm not going to boohoo about it because the second season starts, right? When the 12-team playoff.
That's exactly – there is 2 seasons now in college football. There's the regular season and then there's the playoffs. And honestly, it does us no favors. Let's say Georgia ran the gauntlet of the schedule – wins the SEC championship, they're undefeated going into the playoff. Everyone would be like, wow, Georgia's the best team in the country, hands down. And then they lay an egg. I mean, that could happen, which is extremely unfair. I mean, Georgia played the toughest schedule.
Instead of dropping, and in this scenario, instead of dropping to number 6, we dropped to number 13.
Yeah, that would be the committee's penalty. There's Georgia fatigue. Anyway, put Texas in the playoff, who definitely did not deserve to be in it. Anyway, whatever. Long way of saying. So, we predict these. We've had, technically on, I'm trying to find technically by point spread wise, I won the Kentucky game. I said 24-3. I won by margin, so I'll take it. So let's see. You are 2-1. I'm 1-2. Let's do this. Hold on. Let me get my notes organized. UGA, Bama. All right, go ahead.
I'm first.
Yep.
All right. I'm going to pick Georgia, even though that's more emotion than logic. I'm going to pick them, and your magic number being 30, I'm going to pick them to be 31-20. So I guess, So 31-20, Georgia, 51 points. I think the over-under was 48.5. Georgia covers, Georgia wins. But I'm telling all of y'all who might have a gambling addiction, don't listen to me, man. Go listen to somebody that knows what they're talking about.
I would never touch this game because it's too razor thin. They're too evenly matched teams. So, all right. I do this, and I don't really want to. I don't want to be a. I picked Georgia to win every time that we've gone on here. And I picked Georgia to win pretty comfortably almost every time. I think last year I had Georgia winning the championship pretty comfortably. I'm not going to do it anymore. I can't. I refuse to do it. So, and I don't care if I take the loss on this. I'll gladly take the loss. By the way, I still think Georgia's going to win. I might have done something to make a bet that Georgia will win the game. But I have Georgia losing 27-24. Oh, wait, hold on. Let me make that marker clear on that one. I'm going with Alabama. Roll Tide roll. I do think Georgia can win this game. I think Georgia should win this game. I think we both agree on that.
Yeah,
right?
I agree. Yes.
Georgia should win. Georgia's the better team, I think, as of right now. Now, later down the road, they face in the SEC championship. Might be a different story because I think Alabama's going to improve. I think a lot of people are kind of not seeing that because of how Alabama played last week or 2 weeks ago. I think Alabama's going to improve. But Georgia should win this game. They have every opportunity. They have the revenge factor on them. That's why I feel very confident about that. That's why I'm not that nervous. But Alabama wins 27-24. Late field goal, the ref come in and bail Bama out. Saban's going to be in attendance, so the SEC refs are going to.
So is Trump.
Yeah, that's right. So if you're going to the game, well, one, please don't bring a gun. We don't want to have a third attempt, and then also security going to be lines are get in there early.
Well, I wouldn't bring a gun because if we lost and I was surrounded by Alabama fans, I might blow my brains out on the 50-yard line. So therefore, I will be coming unarmed if I go to Tuscaloosa.
I went to when we played them in with Stetson Bennett, one of his it was his fourth start, and I was with all these Bama fans, and it was one of the most miserable experiences of my life. Also, that's whenever the Braves blew the 3-1 lead against the Dodgers. That was just a terrible sports weekend for me. To turn it around, and then me and you at the national championship the next year, and Georgia beating Alabama, and with all those Alabama fans sad in Indianapolis in the cold, it really filled me with a lot of joy because I remember laying in the backseat of the truck listening to all the Alabama fans celebrate as I laid and whimpered because Stetson Bennett sucked. So it was nice. So if maybe that spirit continues on and guides Georgia to win, I don't know.
Well, coincidentally, speaking of the Braves, they got a big series as we speak. They're not going to play, but they took the game last night that they had to have. So maybe it's going to be the reverse this year. Braves are going to win and get in the playoffs, and Georgia's going to beat Bama in the regular season. So we'll see.
God, I hope
one can hope.
I'm not going to get emotionally invested in the Braves. They've already beaten me down enough this summer. All right. Well, remember to like and subscribe. Follow us on all social media platforms at Terminus Sports _ATL. We're big on TikTok. Give us a follow. Also, our presenting sponsors, Unishippers Atlanta. Talk about them.
We help small to medium-sized businesses with anything shipping related, whether it's small shipments that usually go with FedEx and UPS, or your less than truckload. We are business partners with UPS with discounted rates, and we also move pallets and crates and things like that with large carriers that we take advantage of our buying power. So if you need help with shipping and you think your shipping cost is too high, or you're interested in seeing if we could help you, feel free to reach out to Pat Limpasi.
All right. Give a shout out to Pat, and we'll see everyone on the other side. And hopefully we'll probably recap this on Sunday, win or lose. Georgia plays good enough where we're happy on this side of the world. We'll see. All right. See you on the other side.
See ya.